Hello, friends. If you're watching this video, this is just a fun, candid conversation that I'm having with some of my ladies in my current tip community group. And we're recording this video to just help people know, okay, what is a tip community group? Because I have trouble explaining it to a lot of people. And so we're just going to give this a roll. We didn't really practice any of this before we got on here. We're just going to be ourselves. You might see people drinking or eating or whatever during this. You might see who knows what else, but we're just going to be ourselves. And we don't know how else to be, honestly, in these groups. So what I'm going to do to begin is I'm just going to call on you all and just to tell us a little bit like, who you are, and why did you join the tip community group? You can share as much or little as you want. So we'll just do a general introduction and then we'll go into the open-ended questions. So Wendy, who are you? And as much as you want to share about why you decided to join a tip community group.
Okay, so I'm Wendy Cohen, and I live on a mountain in South Carolina, and I'm creating an intentional community here of people who want to care about the land, who care about the Lord, and who care about each other. And I had seen the way Bethany interacted with people, and I was very, very jealous of it. It was like she had so much vitality, so much energy, so much curiosity, so much interest. And it didn't matter whether she was tired, it didn't matter how long the day had been, it didn't seem to matter. She was there with people, and I was like, I've got to know how you work because I need that for myself. So that's why I joined.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. And huge compliments. And we've seen a lot, I'd say, on your side with that too, about
Yeah.
being present with people. So thank you. Thank you for that compliment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Betty, how about you?
My name is Betty Walton. I live in Amarillo, Texas, in an apartment right now. And I joined because I was desperate for interaction with people. I feel like we haven't gotten to know as many people since we moved here. And I felt kind of isolated and by myself. So I just needed some people.
I love it. And you're happy with the people you got?
Oh, I'm delighted.
I love it. I love how God answered that. It's awesome. Thank you, Betty. All right, Deb, how about you?
Yeah, so I had met Bethany at an event, and then she invited me to do a church 101 group, just I think it was 6 weeks or something like that. And I was very intrigued that there were other people in this world that like to ask deep questions. That like really intrigued me because that's where I've been. And it's so yeah, from the Church 101 group, we did some activities that I had never really seen done, and it had sort of a process with it. So I liked that it had a little bit of structure, but yet there was some depth and was very safe. And I didn't know any of those people, barely knew Bethany, and felt immediately safe, and that was part of it. And learned some skills in that I wanted to further. And then so when this group, yeah, Deb West, I did say that, didn't I? Maybe.
Yes.
Anyway, I think that's my name. Yeah, so when this opportunity came up, I wanted to continue from what I had learned in that 6 week class.
Love that. I love that. And so, yeah, I think some people know that I help out with Luke 10 and amongst other groups, and that's what she's referring to with Church 101. So that's what's so amazing about these groups is they come from everywhere, right? We got Deb, Luke 10, we've got Think Differently Academy, we've got Being Known, the Being Known podcast group. We got so many different groups and backgrounds represented. And the cool part is that all can just fit in and get to know each other and get to know everybody on a deep level. So that's awesome. Thank you, Deb, for reminding me about that. I forgot. We traveled so long together. I'm like, how did you get here?
Well, I actually met you at a Think Differently event, and then
Yes.
Luke 10, and then now this. So it just all kind of weaves together. Yeah.
She's seen all my worlds collide, and she's still here. I don't know. Anyway. All right. Last but not least on this call, Paula, would you like to introduce yourself
Hi,
and how you
yes.
came in this group?
My name's Paula Robbins. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I think, Bethany, I found you through the Being Known podcast discussion group on Facebook. You had put up a notice about one of your pop-up groups, pop-up sessions, and I got in on some of those. I had been listening to the Being Known podcast. I was in the process of reading Kurt Thompson's books and found myself just getting hungrier and hungrier for an experience like the confessional communities that were being described. And I know that what we're doing is not precisely that, but I think it's largely the same type of thing. Looking for spiritual growth, looking to draw closer to God and others through the story work.
Yeah.
And I was so affected by just the pop-up groups, which are what, Bethany, an hour or less usually?
Yeah, hour or less, just popping in and learning how to check in. Yep.
Often, and I don't think we ever had the same group twice.
No.
There were a couple constants. You were a constant, of course. Maybe one or two other people, one person I can think of, and still, each time I came away feeling seen and understood and supported, and in a way feeling closer to the folks that I had just been with than I feel to people that I've known for decades. Because I know a lot of people, I know quite a few people, and people I know that in a crisis I could call on and they would come or do what they could to help. People I know are, do have a true faith in God, are basically good people, and yet the relationships seem to stall out on a fairly shallow level.
Yeah.
And even in the deeper things, it seems to settle into a state of religiosity and everyone quoting the right Bible verses. And stays pretty impersonal, really.
Yeah.
And I just knew that there was more and I needed more. I was working on some difficult issues in my own life and starting to delve into my own story, which 3 years into it, I still feel like I'm just starting to delve into my story in some ways. And I knew I needed to do that, but I also knew I needed some support in doing that.
Yeah, that's huge.
And it is just priceless to me what I have learned from other people and realizing that the details sometimes differ a lot. And yet, I think a lot of what we're experiencing is very much the same.
Yeah, that's huge. And you hit on a big part because we all have different stories, but the more that we share, we go like, wait a minute, you experienced that too?
Yes.
And so I'm just going to be honest. I have some people, and I want to have you guys speak into this. We didn't practice any of this beforehand, so I don't know what they're going to say. So I'm kind of nervous. But a question I get is, Bethany, I'm afraid. I'm really afraid to join one of these groups. Can you guys speak into that? Because I don't think anybody joined this group, I don't think so, without at least a little bit of fear. So how did you deal with that fear? And when did you notice that, okay, it's going to be okay? And how is that for you?
Bethany, I think that it's always a challenge to choose to be vulnerable. Even if we're talking to our best friend, it's a challenge to choose to be vulnerable. And when you're talking about a group of strangers, to make that choice requires a level of commitment to yourself and your own process that's rich and deep. And what I have found in this group is that the more vulnerable I choose to be, the more fruit I see in my life. And it's the constant choice of, will I tell what's on the surface? Will I tell what's emotionally real? Will I tell what's spiritually real? Will I focus on what's going on in my body and is real in my body? Or sometimes will I drop all of that and just wait in silence with the Lord to see what does he want to bring up in my life right now? And every time I do that, it makes me shaky because it's such a depth of vulnerability that comes about. And every time I do that, there's a door that cracks open opens wide or the whole door is removed. And I get to walk into a brand new landscape of his love that's been waiting for me.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Did anybody else have anything to add to that? Because I think there's fear in that, right? Because even if I think I've had conversations with others in this group that is like, what was that, Bethany? Like, what is happening inside of me right now, right? Because it happens. So any other, I like how Wendy said that, like stepping into the new, it's good, but it's also uncomfortable. But yeah, it's also freeing, like all of that in one. And so can anybody else want to speak into that? So good.
I think by the time I started with the tip community, I was largely over that, over having the fear of being front and center going into the situations, because my experience with your pop-up groups was I always felt safe. And I always came away from those experiences feeling valued and really certain that no one who was participating had any inclination to be harsh or judgmental in any way. And there is that sort of quiet underlying dread of realizing that you're going to be invited to go into places that might be painful. You might be invited to go into places, I mean, and I still kind of expect to be at times invited to go into places I didn't even know that those places were there. I didn't even know they existed. And all of a sudden it's kind of like I'm in a foreign land.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it with people who aren't going to leave me and abandon me to that spot, however good, bad, or neutral it might feel, however threatening it might feel. And that's priceless. Just that safety. I think we do a really good job, and I know you promote this, and I know it comes from your heart, Bethany, but I think we do a very good job keeping each other safe.
Yes. I like that. I like that. So
And
good.
when we drift in other directions that might distract from that, you pull us back. So
I
thank
try.
you.
I try. But we know how to have fun too. But I love
Yes.
that. Like we're all here. We're not going anywhere. Like no matter how hard it gets, our group continues to show up. And that's something that for some of us that's brand new to have people that are willing to show up no matter what. So I want to give Deb and Betty a chance to anything you guys want to share too with the fear piece or unknowns.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that keeps it safe is the reminders that you give, and even just the atmosphere of nobody's trying to fix anybody. And that is really different from any other group where people want to give their advice and give their well-meaning and intended, but the atmosphere of curiosity and nobody's trying to fix me or tell me what I need to do or not do unless I ask for it. That autonomy and freedom to know that I can ask for what I need. And I may not know, but even at that, I'm going to get choices like, would you need this or this or that? That part has kept it safe. I think in the beginning it is, yeah, you're like, you don't entirely know what to expect. And it's like, okay, is that the right answer? Is that what they're asking for? And then you realize, hey, there is no right answer. We're all just curious about each other. So that has kept it safe, and just knowing that, yeah, it's just the atmosphere that's created of curiosity, and the way that I think Wendy said something like this, but the way that we ask God questions, it's like, so if you don't know what is it I'm, going to share in your rut, it's like, oh, well, let's just, and cultivating that, hearing God. Sometimes I know people can be intimidated by that. What does that look like? What is that? But having an atmosphere where we can do that together.
Yes.
And there's no rules around that. There's no, oh, got this right, got this wrong. It's like, hey, does it fit? Does it not fit? Does it, and all of those things have made it safe from the beginning of, I guess for me, the fear being, am I going to do what's expected? Am I going, is what's going on here? And I was able to lay that down fairly immediately when I realized the atmosphere of curiosity, I think.
That I love that. And I was about to ask like what safety meant. So you painted a beautiful picture of that, about what that looks like, and the freedom of feeling like you can show up without people fixing you. You're not the project, you know, or the fear of somebody else going off in their 20-minute story and you're just take the background. So I really like how you said that, Deb, and that's beautiful. And yeah, thank you for taking us on that journey. Betty, anything you want to add?
I was thinking, I don't think I've ever been in a group until I joined your groups, because we met at Think Differently.
Yes, we
and
did.
It was 2020 and it was lockdown and it was crazy. And I was completely terrified when I joined that group. I thought, what have I got myself into? I don't know what I'm doing. Well, when I first joined this group, I thought, I don't have the tools some of these people have. I'm not a counselor. I'm not even a coach. What am I doing in this group, But everybody was warm and inviting, and they asked wonderful questions. And I feel like, Deb, nobody was trying to fix me or tell me what I should do or give me all this advice that I didn't need, really. And it's more about a connection. And I really, really enjoy that. And it makes it safe.
I love that. I love that. And Betty, you're a great example, because I remember talking to you about this group and you're like, wait a second, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a coach. And I'm like, yeah, but you enjoy deep community and you're longing for that and you're wanting to experience that. So that's something that makes tip community groups different too, is that community part. You may not be a coach, you may not be a counselor, but the thing is, we have so many amazing people that want to experience deep community and don't have that place. So here's that place. It's a place for everyone, as long as you have that, as long as you want to experience deep community. So I love that. All right. Next,
can I have
go. Yeah.
one more quick addendum. My experience of you, Bethany, I know you have boundaries that separate your ministry and your business from your personal life. I know they're in place, and I never feel them. I feel welcomed by you completely enough that I feel like you've chosen me to be close to you and be a friend. I know I pay you. I know this is a financial arrangement, but that thought never crosses my mind. You're there.
Love that.
Totally genuine.
Totally genuine.
And Bethany, I'm sorry to interrupt, but your camera has gone out.
Yeah, your camera, you're fuzzy. You're very blurry. I was trying to type that.
There we go.
Now it's better.
There we go.
Yay.
Sorry.
Yay.
Okay.
Just because I was in a daze at everything you guys were saying. That's why. No, oh my goodness. Well, and I will say something that what Wendy said. How do I say this? I enjoy being with people. That's like no duh. But I think the reason I love these groups specifically is because you guys are my main people. Like, I do not, you guys know me well enough to know I don't take a bunch of other one-on-ones. I don't start tons and thousands of other groups. When I do a tip community group, you guys are the tip community group. I don't have tons of other ones. And so when you're part of this, I know we offer one-on-ones once a month. Sometimes you guys are like, can I get in for another one? I'm like, sure. We try to make spots, and we have our Marco Polo group, and we have our text thread. We have these ways of communicating. So with all of that, have you guys ever felt like have you ever felt like this group didn't understand you? Or B, have you ever felt like this group was like way too much? I mean, honestly, because we have had several different ways of communicating. So how is that for you, to inviting other ladies into the group with you? Like you went from not solo, but you went from not having a group to all of a sudden group. So how was that transition for you? Was that hard, challenging, wanted?
Not clear on the question. I'm not clear on the question.
Oh, that makes sense. So like before you joined the group, did you have any other groups kind of like this? Or, were you able to like step up? Because I know we did like, interactive appreciation and checking in, but then we also had our text thread, we also had emails, we also had all these other ways of communicating. So at any point, was it like, I'm done, it's too much closeness with the group? Did you ever have that moment? Or was it like, did you have to learn boundaries? Like, how was that experience for you coming into the group like that? Did you have to learn?
The tech part was a bit intimidating for me. And I know I still don't use it real frequently. And I guess there's still part of me that feels like, why would I do this if I don't have some big news to share? Which most days I don't. And I know that's me. It doesn't have to be big news. It just the togetherness part is really precious. But other than that, honestly, does everyone in the group always understand me perfectly? I don't know. Probably not. I probably don't understand them perfectly either, but they're interested. And there's always good questions. And there's always acceptance. And again, I think that just ongoing attitude of curiosity. And I never walk away from a group experience feeling unseen or not valued somehow. And for me, that's enough.
Yeah, it's huge. And thanks for the awareness of technology, because I know we tried some different things, and I think every group has their primary way. I think this group, it's been text and Marco Polo has been the two main things for this group. Some groups it's different, but we like to sit with it and go, what works for everybody? So I like that acknowledgement. Anybody else about any of that?
I've not always felt understood. I have sometimes had people respond to things I've said that don't have a lot to do with what I was actually feeling. That's not always true. I'd say that's true about 20% of the time.
Yeah.
And it has given me the courage to go back and learn how to explain myself in a way that honors the other person and also honors me. And then I have seen the understanding grow in the other people towards who I am. And I have seen that now reflected in my life, that I have that courage now more than I did before in my life. So that's been cool.
That's neat. I like that, because I mean, sometimes like you hear people, oh yeah, I understand it's this way, and you're like, sure.
Ooh, yeah.
Right? But I've noticed that
Really?
about you. You'd be like, well, actually, no. But
I
you'll
know, and
stop and go, okay, how can I reword this? And you would do that. That's true. Wow, that's very provoking. I haven't
yeah,
realized that until you put
and
that
it
in.
even happened the other day. I was describing rain. And to me, rain is one of my most favorite kinds of environments to be in. But for other people, it definitely wasn't. And so it was like, no, let me go back. Let me explain this a bit more.
Love that. That's great. I love that, Wendy. That's good. That's good. I like rain. I'm just saying.
Could I add, could I add to that very quickly?
Yeah.
Wendy, I really like that you do that. That when you say, no, you don't get it. What I mean is, and then you go on and explain more thoroughly or maybe in a different way or whatever. I've had the experience in my life of people saying, you don't get it, and walking away and just leaving me with that, with no way to correct it or repair or whatever. And that hurts. So I thank you for, having the courage to say, no, that's not it. It's more like, and giving us a chance to catch up with you because I value that very much.
Wow, that means a lot. Thank you.
So good.
Oh, yeah, really good.
All right. You guys can still speak on that one, but I'm going to throw something else out there. What has been, and keep in mind, you can share your part of the story. Don't share anybody else's. But when I ask this, what has been one moment in this group that you walked away changed? It could be an exercise that we were doing. It could be a topic that we were discussing. It could have been, you can say something somebody said to you without giving that person away, but you have to tell it from your side of the street. And I didn't prep them with any of this stuff. So if you see them thinking, they really are. I'll give them a minute.
1 minute just jumps to the fore for me when I told my story. And one of our members, their first response was, "I'm really ticked off at your mom." And I was kind of like, oh. And then I realized, so am I. And that's okay. I could have, and in many situations, have done the expected thing of saying, but my mom had her own problems, and my mom had her own suffering, and defending and trying to put a spiritual shine on the situation, which was really quite painful. And it was just not, I mean, that felt very freeing to me.
Love that. Yeah, I think when we share our stories, we have those moments where it's hard to show up and actually share our stories, but then sometimes it's even harder when we hear people respond. And we almost go, no, I'm not feeling that. And you start thinking, oh man. And you start paying attention to what's going on in your body, like, wait a second. And you invite people into that part with you. So
it was almost like the lid off the box, or a door had opened, and it was kind of like, here's the truth, and this is an okay way to feel about that truth.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Piggybacking off of that, not exactly answering this question, more probably your other, I don't know. Anyway, just a thought. I think it's not a specific thing, but some of the times that we're doing like check-ins or even interactive appreciation, and we're describing an emotion, when someone says a word, it's like, it gives me language. It's like, oh yeah, that's what it was. And I didn't know how to label it yet, or I didn't know. And so some of those moments have been pretty powerful. And it's like, oh, now I know what that is, because it's a similar thing, or a
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So sometimes that has been pretty powerful for me, is like, then I could walk away kind of with more information about myself, because now I have a label for that. And it just, there's something about that really does help.
That's good. I love that. And a question that my group dearly loves me asking is, how does that feel in your body?
Yeah.
They're all laughing, so you can tell. But it's really neat because we've had those moments where either the same emotion will feel different to other people, or somebody will describe something, the other person's like, wait, is that what that is? And so it's really intriguing to watch people play off of that. So yeah, I love the way you mentioned that, Deb, and that sharing. It's not just checking in, but it's also checking in with yourself while you're seeing how it impacts others. So
and one last thing to sort of that I was thinking of, there was one particular instance where we did a check-in, and you ask, what do we need, and we get those choices, right? And one of the choices is listening to God together. And it was just so remarkable, and all the things that people heard, that how congruent they were. It's like, it just really was very congruent with what I saw. Like, I a lot of times see in pictures, and someone else will get a word, and so, whatever. And so just the congruency of that, hearing God, is very validating. It's like, okay, this really is what he's saying. I'm not making this up. So especially in the beginning, when you're just kind of playing with some of that. Yeah, those hearing God together times have been pretty powerful for me.
Yes, exactly. Have you had any other groups where you've been able to listen to God together with other people?
No.
No.
Bob Hamp, in some of the Bob Hamp classes, he would give us opportunities to do that as a group, but we weren't like a small group.
Yes, this is yeah.
Yeah, he would have us stop and ask God questions, and that was probably my first experience with that years ago. And but not in this type of setting where you got to share it, or other people listened with you around your think or whatever.
It's huge. That's a huge experience. I love that. And that kind of scares some people. Like, what do you mean we're going to listen to God? What's going to happen? And
But I got to choose that. I got to choose it. I mean, you didn't enforce that on me. It's like you could choose any of these things that you need. It's like that's what I was asking for. So
Yeah.
that autonomy is huge.
Yes.
I love that. And just to piggyback off of that, and we can come back to what and you guys can all, it's our group anyway. But has anybody, like when we go to go listen and you're listening for someone and then you come back and we do this around where you share if you want to, you don't have to. Has anybody ever encountered that moment of, oh no, how's this gonna land? Like, should I really share what I
Oh,
have?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so how
Oh,
has that been? Share more about that? Because I've had that too, but I want to hear it from you all.
Well, at the beginning, I think Wendy noticed this, and she was right. I wasn't super confident about hearing God all the time because sometimes I was sure I heard him, and sometimes I was going, I'm not sure about this. But I've gotten more confident as the group has gone on that I can listen and I can hear. And it's really been a great help to me. Because when you come from a place that nobody ever told you to listen to God and come up with something, and you've never heard this before, it's a little bit scary. And it's also a wonderful mystery of what will happen, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to go back to the last question for just a second, and I think it connects in with this one. But in general, what I have seen is one person after another has taken an area where they've been a victim and they've turned it around in their minds so that they are victorious over that issue. And each time somebody makes that shift, something inside of my guts turns round. It's like it turns back into place where it's supposed to be. And I think that's in terms of our ability to hear from God, but it's also in terms of our ability to handle whatever the frustrations and challenges and problems are of our lives. Just learning that we don't have to be a victim to them.
That's good.
And nobody's ever actually said, I mean, it comes up all the time, but people don't point it out. It's just what happens.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So good.
I still feel compelled to say, maybe there was one time I didn't say this, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is God or if it's just me.
Yeah.
Because it hasn't been frequently. And I think there are some settings where this may be more frequent and abused of people saying, well, God, I just know that God's will for you is, and then they expect you to hop to and just do it because they said so. Or God has given me the freedom to, leave my husband and go with us to guy or rob the till or whatever it is. And it's like, no, I don't. If a spirit told you that, I don't think it was God. A spirit may have told you that, but it wasn't God. So, it can be abused. But I just finished reading Joyful Journey, and with the realization that as soon as I get back from my trip, I need to read it again. But the acknowledgement, the only thing any of us can do is share our own thoughts and our own perceptions. And yes, the Holy Spirit is in us. And the Holy Spirit can speak and does speak to us. And yet the Holy Spirit also speaks through the scripture, and the Holy Spirit is absolutely never going to contradict himself.
Yes.
And that when we speak God's truth, the appropriate truth in the appropriate way at the appropriate time, it leads to shalom. It leads to a settledness and a peace and a sense of, at least some sense of a bit of flourishing, of moving forward, of things being good and being better. Again,
Yeah.
we're not talking about making problems magically disappear. That doesn't happen. And yet, when I believe we really do hear from God, and I am seeing that and accepting that more in myself, although it's still kind of hard for me to make that come out of my mouth. I also know in this group that's accepted, and I think everyone's mature enough to understand that. Again, this is what Paula is hearing from God through Paula's filters in this moment. And if it's helpful to you, take it. And if it's not helpful to you, just leave it.
Yeah.
Because
I love
I'm not
that.
an authority. I'm not an authority over anyone. I'm not even an authority over myself.
Right. And I think the words that we use is before we even start sharing, after we listen, I'm like, just a reminder, guys, this is not the saith the Lord. We're just sharing what we
Yes. And you've
captured.
said
And
that.
it's always up to you, right? To share.
Sure.
There might be something that you got and you're like, I'm not sure if that might just be for me. You know, you can be listening on behalf of somebody else and God say something to you, right? But then also I was like, try it
But that
on,
is
see
that.
if it fits. I love that. And I mentioned this, it reminds me of so many times of like my kids play sports, right? So they don't just walk onto the field and know how to play it. They have to practice, right? Over and over and over and over again. So this is why this is called TIP Community Group, Thrive Intentional Practice Group. We're not always going to get it right. I'm sure we've always gotten it right in here, right? Everybody's laughing, right? No, but that's what's great about it, because we have a safe container to share that and learn, and then the more we practice, the safer we are about taking that risk and trying it with someone else in our everyday, right?
Yeah.
So that's huge. I like
I
that.
think Bob Hamp says it this way. He says, the ministry of the Spirit will always have the fruit of the Spirit.
Yes.
So
Yes.
sometimes if somebody says something, and maybe you may not totally I deal with, okay, it's a slide and I'm sliding down, but what fruit is being produced? Oh, I feel hope. So maybe that's what I got out of it. Maybe the particular word wasn't super, or maybe 3 days later it makes sense. Sometimes that's the case. But I always think, okay, what fruit of the Spirit is this giving me, even on top of, or instead of, or alongside of the word itself? And that's been kind of my litmus test kind of thing, or a way to approach. Yeah, that might have just been Bethany had too much pizza last night or something,
That happens.
but
That does
it gave me
happen.
hope. It gave me a fruit, or joy. It gave me joy. There's a fruit that came from it, even if the word itself was Bethany and not the, whatever. I'm just using that to be funny.
I love
But
you. It's okay.
yeah, so that's that really helped me when I think of that. The ministry of the Spirit will always have the fruit of the Spirit.
I love that. I love that. It's so good. I have two more questions left, and you guys know you can always bounce around. I'll try to bring us back. I'm going to ask the first one, and then I'll wait, and I'll ask the second one here in a minute. But one generalized question. We had such a safe place that we brought in resources. Some people shared videos, some people shared books, some people shared, different places. How is that for you all to have different resources in here that maybe you haven't seen before? Like, was that helpful to you? Was that a safe place where you could go and share? I mean, I would love to hear some more about that.
I could look into those. I always love having more resources. That was such a really neat thing, sharing some of that stuff.
Yeah. Good. And I think, wasn't it the Dream Giver was one for you, Deb, right? That you got to read and you were like, what is this? I love it. And I think you recommended it. You were actually one of the early ones. And I think you've been in this group twice, 3 times. So it came for you one time, and then you came and brought it into the second time, I think, which was really neat. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that was a really cool resource. It's gift that keeps on giving, And I actually have 2 of them at my house because I know there's somebody I need to give them to. I haven't found them yet, but that book I will be giving away, often. So yeah, and then I got to share some, the Jamie Winship stuff. That was fun for me to get to share that, because it's right along the lines. It just deepened kind of to me what we were already doing. And so yeah.
Oh, and I enjoyed that so much.
Yeah.
Because I got to go back and listen to some of that. And
Yeah.
And
It
we've thrown
really
in,
resonated with me.
oh
Yeah.
yeah. And we've thrown in like Kurt Thompson, and we've thrown in Bob Hamp, and we've thrown in, I know there's somebody on this call that really enjoys playing piano and leading us in worship. And it's so neat. It's so
Stephanie.
neat to have this text thread sometimes, because every group's different. Keep in mind, every group's different. But this group specifically has had those moments where I can't keep up sometimes with the text. So I go later and I can listen to some of the audio and I'm like, what is this? And it's always the right song, or always the right comment, or always the right resource at just the right time. And they have no idea, what we're going through, but it's just, you just never know. And God puts these people into our lives where it's just like, okay, like this is not a mistake. This is not just a coincidence. That God really did orchestrate that. So it's huge. Okay. Last
I think,
question. And again, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to say again, on my own journey of seeking truth over the past 3 or 4 years, it has been a confirming thing to me to have, I don't remember the word, I think Deb used a few minutes ago, the congruity, I think it was, of a variety of different people with different backgrounds, sometimes addressing somewhat different things, putting spotlight on the same truth. And then when you hear it from this person, and then gee whiz, you find that this person over here, who's ministering effectively in another way, is saying the same thing and acting on the same thing. And then you find out this other person over here is acting on the same truth. It's like, maybe, yeah, that's a confirmation of truth to me. And when you see the fruits of the Spirit and what various people are doing, again, sometimes in wildly different settings and in different ways and with different personal gifts that they're bringing to it. And yet, that same truth is underlying and is a driver and a foundation for everyone. I don't know why that would seem surprising.
Yeah.
Because God doesn't really change from one person to the next and from one setting to the next. But that has been very encouraging to me. And like you said, the things that various people have brought into it there's a gift, there's a blessing there in each one of those. Maybe a blessing I didn't know I needed, maybe a blessing I never would have thought to ask for or not how to ask for, but there's a blessing there always, always.
I love that. That's so good. And I think one of the lies that the enemy wants us to believe is that we're all alone, or don't share that because nobody will understand that, or
Not
whatever.
valid.
Yeah. And
No one's
that's what
about
this
that.
group does. It's like, no, like we not only do we understand, there's a lot of times that we can personally relate with that. So that's huge. Thank you. Last question. Y'all ready? Last question. And you can answer it however you would like to. But if you could picture somebody on the other side of the screen that's debating about if this group is the right fit for them and not sure if they want to take the step, what would you say to that person? What, it could be a question, it could be a short story, it can be anything that you felt. And I want you to be quiet for a minute. I want you to say like whatever's on your mind. I want you to just really sit with it. If somebody was on the other side of this going, I don't know if I should do this tip community group, what would you say to them? It could be based on, again, your experience. It could be an image, it could be a picture, it could be a thought. But what would you say to them to just help them settle, to allow to settle inside of themselves? And when you get that, you can share.
For me, regardless of where you are, whether you're in the middle of a crisis, whether you're dealing with long-term effects of trauma, maybe repeated trauma, or whether you're just dealing with the mess of everyday life, if you would like to have a very positive and solid and God-honoring home base, this is a fantastic home base. And no, it's not going to fix all your problems. and it's not therapy. If you need those things, you need to seek those things elsewhere. But if you would like a really warm and welcoming home base where you can just be with people and be safe and be valued and loved, tip communities can give that to you.
I love that, Paula. I wanted to so badly go, no, all your problems be fixed, but we know that's not true.
I've given
I
up
love
on
it. I love that
gave up
caveat
on that
there.
fantasy before I met you, Bethany. So you
Yes.
didn't have to deal with that me. Be thankful. You know?
I love it. I love it. All right.
I think the way I would describe the group is you have just a holy permission to be yourself.
Mhm.
It's really a sacred thing to be in a space where you're free to be just yourself. And sometimes you don't even know who that is. So you get to try this out, and you kind of discover that as you go, so, but you're safe to be yourself. And so I would just describe it as like, it's just a place of holy permission. It's like, there's a lot of places in this world or in life that have all these rules around, this is who you're supposed to be. This is what in this setting, you need to quote fit in. But you belong here. There's a belonging here. It's not just I fit with this group because we all have this same kind of thing. It's deeper than fitting in. It's more of a belonging, whether we're completely opposite, in so many different ways or not. The belonging is there, and it's just just you have permission to be.
Love that. To be yourself and maybe even find yourself. Love that. Beautifully worded, Deb. Thank you.
I think there's always a deeper place we can go to in the Lord, with each other, with ourselves. There's always another level of revelation of what community, what friendship, what love can mean to us. And a lot of times in life, we have to sell ourselves short because people won't, or circumstances won't allow us the time, the space, the freedom to really dive deep into our hearts and allow things to come to the surface, or we don't feel safe to do that. And this is a place where there's a great deal of safety and there's a great deal of support, and yet there's still boundaries. So you can't get lost in what you're feeling. There are boundaries that are in place. And I find it to be very, very fruitful.
Love that. Freedom and boundaries.
Yes.
Love that. Love that. It's so good.
I would say if you want to get out of the regular groups you're in and you want to try something new, and even though you're a little bit afraid, there is great benefit in joining a tip group. You're going to get to know some new people, usually in very deep ways. You're going to be safe. You can be you. You don't have to be anything else. Nobody's going to try to fix you or tell you what you have to do or say, thus saith the Lord, you got to do this. It's a safe place to explore and connect and get to know people and get to know more about yourself and more about the Lord. So come join us. It's a great place to be.
I love that. I love
Oh,
that.
so good.
So good, you all. Well, thank you, ladies, for being here. Again, thank you for being yourselves. And what's amazing, I know when I push record, sometimes I'm like, okay, how are they going to show up? But all of y'all showed up just like you normally are. And that says a testimony right there to put a safe place. So thank you all. And you guys can wave goodbye as I push the stop button.
Bye.
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 Blessings.